Hello friends, I hope you all are well today. This is Mudassar from PhoneYear and today I'm going to review the camera of POCO X3 NFC. It's a new phone that was landed a few days back in Pakistan, and ever since I've gotten hold of this phone, I've taken a lot of images. And today in this video, I'm going to share a few of them with you and also my opinion about the performance of its camera. So by the end of this video, you'll have a better idea, is it a worth buying camera phone for you or not? This phone has a quad camera setup that is led by a 64 megapixel lens, which is Sony IMX682 sensor. Then there is an ultra-wide camera of 13 megapixel that was 8 megapixel in POCO X2, whereas the rest of the two lenses are the same, which are 2 megapixel each for bokeh and macro shots. The 20 megapixel on the front, which was also a part of dual camera setup in the X2, has been downgraded and there is now a single 20 megapixel lens on the front right in the middle of the punch hole. And guys, one important thing before we move on, please subscribe to my channel because it really means a lot. The default camera app has everything within the reach and right on the front screen. 3 toggle keys here can take you to the ultra wide, 1x and 2x. The last one is obviously the digital zoom that can go as high as 10x. Underneath there is a rolling menu bar for all the available modes. Most of them are in more menu, but their order can be changed as per the need. The only menu that cannot be moved are video and photo. You can do a few more tricks here and customize the layout of the more menu by either using the default position or reveal it by scrolling up from the bottom. You can also customize the font colors. You can find almost every mode here except for the macro mode, which is present in the top menu. The setting button is also nearby that offers some more control over the camera settings. So starting off with the day shots, POCO X3 maintains vibrant colors in the standard mode with and without AI, but AI further boosts the colors and contrast that looks really nice on mobile screens. Almost every image looks very good and crisp on the phone screen, but on bigger screens like laptops, the image reveals their actual definition. Let's have a look at some of the images by throwing them on a bigger screen. Subjects that are not far away from the camera are captured with great details in good daylight, and you can actually enjoy 100% zoom on the display screen without much issue. But you can notice that images look softer without AI, whereas the AI mode increases the contrast and vibrancy, and when the algorithm sharpens the image, it also increases the noise. The 13 megapixel ultra-wide camera is a good performer in the daylight. The images carry a fair amount of details in the central part, but elsewhere, both on the right and left, the noisy and washed out areas are more prominent. This is still a problem with the most of the mid-range camera phones. You will not notice these washed out areas on the phone screen unless you zoom them fully. The 64 megapixel grabs more detail, but just like the standard mode, the 64 megapixel image is softer looking, and when you tend to compare it with its own 16 megapixel AI mode, you can feel the difference. For a reference, let's compare a few POCO X3 shots with that of Redmi Note 9 Pro and Note 9s. I took Redmi images a few months ago at the time of its review. The 1x AI shots from both cameras are showing a clear difference of details. POCO's image looks less sharper, whereas Note 9 Pro is much more contrasty and shows better details. In POCO X3's favor, the intensity and direction of light may also play the role, but I assume the difference will still remain if the images are taken at the same time. And also take a look at the 64 megapixel shot from POCO X3 and Redmi Note 9 Pro. You can see a lot more detail on Redmi than POCO. The digital zoom isn't the best feature on POCO X3, but if the light is falling equally on a subject, the 2x can create very good results. But on the other hand, with the slight variation in light, things can really get ugly when you need to zoom it further like 4x or 10x. So in my opinion, if you want to go closer to any subject, I think it's better to use the 64 megapixel lens and take out a cropped image later that will still give you better details than the digital zoom of POCO X3. POCO X3 sometimes create purplish artifacts, and I noticed it happening in these shots. In the same picture, at the time of shooting these images, the sun was rising from behind this building, and look at this purplish outline in the top edge area. This is something unwanted in any image. We notice it on almost every image we took, whether it was standard mode, AI or 64 megapixel. Usually I get a lot of help from the HDR modes on the smartphones under such situations, but POCO X3's HDR mode didn't help me here. And also you can notice it on these trees in both HDR and without HDR mode in this set of images. POCO X3 does a reasonable job with the bokeh and macro shots. Although there is a 2 megapixel bokeh sensor on board, the camera setup seems to make use of main lens as well, because we are getting 16 megapixel bokeh shots using the portrait mode that are mostly 10 megabytes in size or above. And unlike the main lens, these pictures show natural colors despite the AI treatment. The edges of the subjects are sharper and the subject pops out nicely. There may be some hit and miss moments when the camera app stops focusing on the subject that will result in some noisy and blurred images, but overall, the result is quite good in the good light. Macro shots on the other hand creates 2 megapixel images. The portrait mode does not allow zooming in, but macro mode can give you up to 2x zoom. Macro images are quite reasonable in colors and show a good detail, but also carry some noise. POCO X3 with its 20 megapixel front camera can take some cool selfies in the good light. The facial detail and skin tone are not to complain about, but you can notice white sky in almost every outdoor selfies unless you turn on the HDR mode. But night selfies hardly carry similar details. Selfies with light sources in the background are not very impressive. The front lens does not comfortably handle the neon signs in the background as claimed by the company, so you need to create a distance from the signboards. However, the flashlight is helpful in most of the cases, but that will most of the time blow out the background. When the POCO X3 directly interacts with the light source, it doesn't seem to handle it efficiently. It has a dedicated night mode, but that does not help to deal with the artificial lights in a good way. It can be helpful in low lit areas, but it also creates a lot of artifacts. But I found the Pro mode really helpful for controlling the exposure level and the unwanted noise. Well, when the lens is not confronting the light source at night, the result is far better. Images are colorful and very much social media shareable. You can also shoot up to 4K videos at 30 frames per second from the rear camera, but the front camera is limited to 1080p at 30 frames per second. The EIS is available on the rear camera, which is only applicable on 1080p at 30 frames per second and 720p. The video results are not bad for this mid-range phone. The colors and details are good. Have a look at the sample videos. So guys, this is the 4K video at 30 frames per second, and it does not allow any stabilization. The moment you tap on stabilization, it switches back to 720p or 1080 at 30 frames per second. So guys, I've turned on the stabilization mode and it has switched me back to the 1080p at 30 frames per second. This phone allows you only 1080p video at maximum from the front camera. The other option is 720p. So I'm making use of 1080p right now. Let's check out the background, the picture quality. The sun is behind me right now. And of course you are listening to my voice. So guys, can you see me in this video? It's being made from the rear camera and it's a 1080p video at 30 frames per second. And if you can't see me clearly, I can switch to the Pro mode and see what can this mode do if you are in a position when the light is not much around and you have to make a vlog. So this is the kind of result you can get with the Pro mode if you are making a vlog in a situation when at night there is not much light and you have to cover something, especially when you are traveling or you want to make a travelog. The POCO X3 can also shoot slow-mo videos. It allows 960 frames per second slow-mo at 720 resolution, whereas at 1080 resolution only 120 fps is allowed. There is a flash in case you want to shoot slow-mo in low-lit areas, but that only works for the closer objects. POCO X3 NFC is a mid-range phone in Pakistan, and based on the price, it mainly competes with the likes of Infinix 08, Redmi Note 9S and Pro, Huawei Y9A, Huawei Nova 7i, Realme 5 Pro and similar phones. We got reasonable results in the daylight, and if you only want to look at images on your phone and share the same on social media, you may not feel a quality related issue. Actual size of the images on larger screens show issues related to noise, purple shade on some images, and inconsistent HDR mode. The night mode is not as impressive as we have found on some of the rival phones, but we have noticed that Pro mode can solve the problem in almost every situation. However, the phone offers a lot of interesting mode, especially the vlog mode, front and back video, macro mode, macro video, and some amazing filters. So guys, this is the camera review of POCO X3 NFC from my side. If this video is helpful for you, please like it, share it, and do comment me to share your opinion. And don't forget to subscribe to my channel because it really means a lot. Until my next video, Allah Hafiz.